Okay, so I always get asked, and you always hear it, I caught my fish on a jig, caught my fish on a jig, maybe a jig and a pig, jig and something else. But that's such a vague and wide-ranged term because there's so many variations of a jig, and you can use it so many different ways. So what we're going to go through, we'll go through 5 or 6 here presentations, different jigs, different types of baits to be using with the jigs. But your standard one, when you hear guys saying I was using a jig, is you're going to get something like this. So your standard jig, when you hear people talking about a jig, is they're using a skirted jig. This is a silicone skirted jig. And this one right here is a football head in about 3/4 ounce, and it's really good use for open water, sandy bottoms, someplace where you're dragging the bait and you're doing a lot more dragging. You're not really casting into brush or anything. And what a football jig will do is when you're moving the bait and you pull it on a line tie, it actually makes the bait roll up as it goes up. And so if you're trying to imitate a crawdad, it'll roll up and go up and come down. And the other good thing about a football head jig is it doesn't roll and lay down on its side very well. So when you put your trailer on here, it'll generally always stay in that position, especially as your football gets a little bit bigger. But you can see that it's shaped just like a football. It keeps it from rolling on its side and keeps the hook pointed up. What we're going to do here real quick with this football jig is we're going to put a trailer, and you'll hear the term that says I was using a pig and jig or some kind of trailer, which a pig would be a pork chunk. What we're using today, and you generally always want to put a trailer on these. This type of bait, this is what they're used for. What we're using today, this is a Yamamoto flapping hog. Looks very similar to a crawdad. It's very compact. It's made to go on a jig or a small size bait. It's got a lot of appendages out here. It's very heavy and a lot of action on this bait when it's swimming through the water, like the craws flipping up and like on a crawdad. So what you'll want to do when you're putting a trailer on a jig, most of your jigs are going to have a little barb on the keeper, something like that to help hold that bait. So you want to kind of look and see about how far back you got to run the hook. So this one we're going to come back about halfway in the body. Just run it down the center. Most of the baits, if you have some two-tone colored baits, I generally always put the lighter side of the bait down. So this would be the down side, the hook side would be the up side. So if this was a black and white type trailer or a brown and cream, you put the brown side up and the white side down. So we've got it about halfway through the body. You run it up, press it right up against tight onto that keeper and next to the silicone. On the skirt, hold it out, and then when you're fishing it, then you're going to get a very compact, a bigger, bulkier bait. And when you cast this bait, even though it's heavy and it's big and it's bulky, it has a very slow presentation. It floats really good with the bait when it hops down. A lot of action, the skirt moving all over, the appendages on the flapping hog going all over the place. Very good bait to be using with big fish and in the spring, especially when the fish are on a pre-spawn bite and they're trying to eat just about anything that moves.